Hi, this is Carrie Hummingbird, and this is Soul Nectar, that show that talks about all things essence and who we really are outside of these bodies and these lifetimes that we're currently experiencing, and talking about that which is almost impossible to describe, but we can do it by telling our stories and talking about our stories. So today I'm really excited to introduce you to Maura Sweeney. Welcome, Maura.
Thank you, Carrie. I'm glad to be with you and looking forward to whatever we're going to talk about.
Yeah, because it's a mystery. So I like it that way. So Maura, for Maura, living happy inside out is more than a slogan. It's a well-honed life mantra for someone who left behind outside expectations to find inner happiness and purpose. After receiving a political science degree from Boston College, Maura left law school studies and long-held family expectations to pioneer her own path to passion and purpose. Following a decorated corporate management career and time as a homeschooling mom, Maura relaunched at midlife to pursue a global calling she had as a child. Today, she's traveled to 60 countries and holds the trademark title Ambassador of Happiness. She's the author, podcaster, Huffington Post blogger, and frequent media guest, and is also an international speaker on topics of influence, leadership, and emotional intelligence. A catalyst for better society, Maura Sweeney helps individuals find their voice, entrepreneurs develop their brand, and leaders emerge into their highest and most authentic versions of self. So this is why you guys now know why I have Maura on the show, because I'm about all those things. I love all that. It's like, yes, let's do that. Let's do life really well. So, Maura, I warned
Yes.
you when you came on
Yes.
that I have a little bit of a unique format here. I like to talk about, I like to start off talking about how did you, what was that life vision? Like, how did you know your purpose? Like, how did you really know yourself on the inside? Tell us a story about discovery of that. Because you were saying in your bio, like it started it as a kid. So,
It did. I was really little. I could remember the World's Fair and watching It's a Small World. It's a small world after all. It's a small world after all. Watching all these children from all parts of the world sing at the World's Fair. And I think they were all mannequins or whatever. But the idea within it was we we are a small world, and it was a happy world at its base, at its core. It was a peaceful world. It was a harmonized world, even though, Carrie, it was filled with all kinds of, like a cornucopia of personalities and appearances and dress and everything. I sense at some level that I knew of that world, which to me is the real world. It's a harmonized one, it's a peaceful one, it's a one where everyone is like an extended relative. I know that world is for real. And I remember also looking up at airplanes when I was in preschool thinking, oh, where are they going? Who's on those planes? I would imagine people from everywhere. And I wanted to go and meet those people around the world. Another story was hearing the fable that if you dug deep enough, you could dig to the other side of the globe, in which case I would be saying hello to my friends in China. So I remember convincing my younger brother, we're going to dig a hole and see our friends in China. And I honestly believed I was going to see them, but our hole was never deep enough.
you know
Now,
what? I love that. Actually, I remember as a kid hearing that same story, like dig a hole to China. And I
yes.
kept like, that really lit my imagination up. Like, wow, you could dig through all the way down and come out the other
It's a
side.
big job, let me tell
What
you.
would happen if you did? Like, they'd be like, who is that popping up from underneath the soil?
And I sincerely expected people to be on the other side saying hi.
Hi.
And yet it wasn't one of those jobs you could do and be ready by dinner time. You couldn't finish it by dinner time. So that was me as like a preschooler, 4 or 5 years old. And I never forgot any of that. In fact, since this is the kind of show we could talk about essence, where do we come from? Where do we get these inspiring moments? I could also remember being maybe four-ish, going in the back seat of the car to my paternal grandparents' house. And I had these dresses. We were probably going on a Sunday. We always had to wear dresses. I couldn't stand it because that meant I couldn't play with my friends at my grandparents' house. But this dress, little white dress, it had a rooster on it, and it had my name, Maura, um, what do you call it? Embroidered on the inside of it. And here I am as this little child, small, sitting in the back of the car thinking, I don't know where this dress came from. I don't know where this name came from. I don't know who gave me this body. I actually used to think about constantly flying in the air, being, whether you could say like an angel or being one of these free birds, literally. You see the butterfly behind you? That
Yeah.
to me is normal living. So I used to think, how did I get here? Why am I smaller than these bigger people? Why does this thing feel so heavy? How did I get here? And one person said to me, I was invited a couple of years ago to speak at the inaugural Nelson Mandela Day celebrations and also at a big Model UN conference with students from, I think, I don't know, over 20 countries around the world. One of the keynotes who spoke before I did said to me later on, you know what, Maura? You never forgot where you came from. He said, a lot of us, when we come into this world, we have these knowings, these remembrances before the outer world dictates to us, before all the dogmas hit us, before all the rules and all the regulations and all the ways to conform, all of those thoughts, before all the fears hit us. And he said, you never forgot where you came from and you never forgot who you are. And so I hope this answers the question, but here I am, Carrie. I'm no longer 5, in case nobody noticed that. It's many decades later. But here's a crazy thing. Even though knowing what I knew as this child and feeling so, let's say, hopeful of the real world, I had to go through decades of everything other people do, all through school. What does everybody deal with when they go through school? I'm married. I've been married for maybe 40 years. We have a daughter. I raised a daughter. I had a corporate career. I'm older. So I have all of these life experiences. And Carrie, I always knew there was something I was supposed to do. I would have seen myself years ago as a goodwill ambassador. And how ironic, I'm now called the ambassador of happiness. And I have it without any official titles, official contacts. I'm not affixed or affiliated with any organization. And here I am doing decades and decades later from what was in my heart and mind to do back then. But I'm going to tell you, I knew I needed life experience. And secondly, the world wasn't ready for the things I wanted to talk about.
Well, isn't that true? Okay, so a couple of things I love about what you said is that I really resonate with is this idea of being a blank slate. Like you remember how it really is. And the world is actually like simple. One of the gifts that I got from my mom, because my mom grew up kind of Southern Baptist with my grandmother in Midwest Texas.
So
That's just all I got to do is say
or dogmas,
make that face. Really wonderful, but like also like really dogmatic, and there was a lot of stuff that my mom just like felt was incongruous, and she didn't feel like it was true, like because she grew up in the South, so. And I've shared this story before on this show, but basically, and my mom remembers like in the Bible study, in their little preschool version, what do they call Sunday school? In Sunday school, and they would be singing the song like all the little children, red and purple and blue, and like whatever, like all the colors of the rainbow, and all the little kids, and they're all children of God. And then there'd be a colored bathroom and a white bathroom. And my mom would be like, why? And she would ask, why can't I go in a colored bathroom? Because that's clearly where the rainbow is. And I want to go in there. And they said, no, you can't, because you go in this white bathroom. And didn't make sense, right? It made no sense.
To a child's intellect and sense of sincerity and logic, correct?
Exactly. So innocent. And my mom said, I'm never accepting this. This doesn't make any sense. So when she got older, she rejected the whole thing and said, I'm out, like I don't, this isn't true. So she didn't give me any religion. She made me a blank slate. So people often tell me like, why are you so naive? Like, because I remember, because I was never programmed any other way.
That story about not only Christianity, now from your perspective, or your mom's perspective, it was Baptist, but also being down south during that era.
During that era.
During the era of segregation. So on the one hand, you're learning a truth But then in practicality, oh no, we can't do that. Which of course makes no sense to a child. That's a form of insanity, isn't it?
And that's what we're
Which
doing in this
one
world,
of them
though.
has to be true?
That's what
And
we're
the other,
doing in this world, Maura. I mean, because you travel around the world. So you travel around, you see all the different people, right?
yes.
And so I want you to talk about this, because what I realized in my life is because I have this blank slate, I don't have rules. So I would be friends with everybody who I felt like being friends with. I didn't have any rules around that. So I can be friends with you. There's no reason I can't. We don't have to go to the same church. Like, I can be friends with you. I can be friends with you. I can be friends with you. And it's all congruent for me. Whereas other people would be like, well, you can't be friends with that person because there's rules, because this, and I think that our whole world is doing that right now. Like, you can't like this person because they believe this and that's against what we believe. And so therefore, what? Like, it's actually so much simpler. So talk a little bit about that and your journeys and how that has opened
Oh
even more
my,
for you.
even as you're speaking, I have so many thoughts that are coming to mind that I could share, because I had a similar thought when I was a child. I grew up Roman Catholic. And again, this is pre-Vatican II, which non-Catholics and young Catholics wouldn't know, but they changed a lot of the rules during the Vatican II era in the 1960s. And let me just share this with you. This is my story about incongruence. Give me the right word. It's incongruent.
Incongruency.
Thank you. I don't think I've ever said it that way. Okay. When logic doesn't measure up. There were the 10 commandments, but then we also had big sins and little sins known as venial sins. And the whole idea was you had to go to talk to a priest and confess these sins to get your soul cleaned. You'd say a couple of prayers, and then after that, you were good until you committed the next sin. But always you had to go to a priest. That's not really the issue. Here's the issue. We as Catholics back then had several other sins, like you couldn't have communion if you ate after midnight the night before. And there was another one that said you cannot eat meat on Fridays. Now, I'm a little kid, 6, 7. I don't really care. I could eat cheese pizza on Friday. It made no difference to me. I never thought about it. But the whole idea was, if you did commit a sin like eating meat on Friday, and the nuns used to tell us, and if you get hit by a car and die, and you still have that so-called venial as opposed to a mortal sin on your soul, you're going to go into some kind of flames known as purgatory until you paid for that sin and get out. All right, I just accepted it all. I was a little kid. But here, I have to tell you this. We didn't know where we were
It
going,
doesn't make
right?
any sense to me because I didn't have any of this.
Okay.
Like,
Well, but I just gave it a thought. I didn't really consider it until, Carrie, after Vatican II was over, they decided it's no longer a sin to eat meat on Fridays.
so
Now,
how could it be a sin before and now it's not? Now
well,
it's
wait a
okay.
minute. This was so traumatic for me. And I think anybody with any trust in God would have had their own moment like that, kind of like your mom did. It doesn't make sense. This was so awful for me. And I was maybe 8 at the time. I thought, wait a minute. God has some people right now in flames, literally suffering in flames in purgatory because they ate meat on Friday and didn't get a chance to confess it to a priest. But now I or anybody else could eat meat on Friday and it's okay. Let me tell you, Carrie, in my innocence, my heart knew that God was eternal. God was good. God embraced everyone like his or her
Yes.
own children. Why would you favor one over another? I couldn't conceive of that, okay?
I can't get that
Fair,
either.
loving, embracing, always wanting to be known. This is how I know and understand God as a young child, even though I'm learning all of these rules. Carrie, I have to tell you something unbelievable. I was 8 years old, I want to say, when I learned they changed the rules. I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. I asked teachers, I asked parents.
Yeah.
I'm sure I asked my CCD teacher,
Because
which
your
was
heart's going out to all those ones suffering that broke the rules before, but now it's okay.
right. And then, wait a minute. If my trust was in this unseen, benevolent God, that I could sit on God's lap, everybody else could sit on God's lap. It was all about love. It was all about inclusion. And now suddenly this person has changed the rules and making some of my brothers and sisters in flames, and it's okay now. You know what it did for me, Carrie? It made me wonder, wait a minute, who is God? Who's running the show? I literally felt, this is so hard to imagine. You got to be like in my skin. I felt like the entire axis of everything I ever believed on about the unseen world that was always so good flipped like this. And I thought I was slipping off the side. And I could actually bring it back right now. I felt like nothing in my life stood still. I didn't know where my grounding was. I didn't know what I could trust in. I was so scared. But you ready? This is kind of one of the questions you asked. Where'd you find your essence? Nobody could answer this question. And I feel like I don't even know where heaven or hell is. I don't know who to trust. I thought this God that I could always trust, I can't. Okay, ready for what happened to me at this early age before anybody could tell me anything? No human being could answer my question. And then all of a sudden, one day, I'm walking across, probably from CCD class, which is like religious studies in Catholic church
Yeah.
for kids in public school. And I remember I had navy blue or black knee highs on. I'm looking to make sure I walk properly. And all of a sudden, a voice, I can't say it's audible because it literally went right through me.
I've had that one. Yeah.
You know, how do you describe it, right? I
But,
was 8 or 9. This is what it was. I never change.
the truth is always the truth. That's the
What,
thing.
Terry? Do you
Ah,
want to know something? I went home that day and I remember having milk and I think my Oreo cookies and my axis was back in line.
yeah.
Because if I could not trust in a universal, benevolent, all loving, all powerful, all good God that was the same to every one of us, I literally couldn't live on this earth. And I want to say thank God for talking.
For telling you. Yeah, I
And then
never
you know what
changed.
I had to realize at that point? That an institution could change, but God would never
God
change.
never changes. I
Anyway,
love
that's a
that.
long story, but it was so dramatic. I can't even tell you.
I have another pathway into this,
What?
realizing that some of this stuff is false, like some of this religious stuff is really just made by humans. Because I wasn't indoctrinated in any of that. So I have this blank slate. And so I'm just like a little kid, just out in nature, just feeling everything and knowing that, the sunlight is there for a reason, the butterflies, the flowers, like it's loving, it's gentle, it loves me, just feeling all that, even though I had a really rocky 0 to 5, I still out in nature, I was like, nature is not the problem, people are, like I knew. I was like, it's not the world, it's people.
Oh,
And
okay.
people are the problem. And then later in life, because I've had this natural way of like finding God for myself is like through nature, because nature is uncomplicated. It is always the same. It's predictable. There are things that happen. The leaves fall in the fall and they leave the trees, and then this in the spring they come out. The sun comes up every morning, the moon comes up every night. Like it's predictable, and it's always loving and gentle. And even if there's some storm that comes through, it has a purpose. Everything has a purpose. And I knew that as a child, like I can trust this. And so my whole pathway to God became through nature. So when I was an adult, I kind of stumbled across this shamanic path. It made perfect sense to me. I'm like, that makes sense, it's a direct connection, that makes sense to me. But as soon as I started doing that, I started noticing that people who had religious training like thought it was evil. And I was like, how can you think the earth is evil? Like, I don't understand that. How can you think that it's evil? That Why is that evil? And I started realizing that it's sort of like this false information that like if you only can go through God through this one pathway. And if you don't go through the one pathway, then you're not really finding God. You're finding something other than God that's not true. And then you're going to go straight to hell. And that was what I was being told. But here's my thought. God loves all God's children, right? I mean, we were born because we're born in love. We're born because we were loved. We were cared about enough to be created. Why would a benevolent creator create people for thousands and thousands of years without the one true path and doom them all to hell, and then create the one true path with the one teacher, Jesus Christ, right? For example, and then those people are saved. But everybody else is screwed because they didn't have the benefit of that teacher.
I know this
That's
is,
my question. How would God do that?
see, you know what?
I don't
You,
think he
then you'd have
would.
to rediscover who God is and what God is, because then God really doesn't make sense. God is not love. It doesn't make any sense to, let's say, a little soul like yours. Think of it, doesn't. It
It
does not
makes no
register.
sense.
But you had asked me something about travel and what do I see? Do you know it's an interesting thing? Being brought up Catholic, and even though I was brought up Roman Catholic, you could see I had questions as a child. So I always had to find that presence of God, that presence of peace. And I really believe that is, as we follow it, that love, that peace, that forgiveness, that oneness, we find our way back home. I know saying that definitely falls in line with Jesus.
Hmm.
Um, and others as well. Okay, but let me
The
say
Buddha.
this.
I mean,
Yes, it
there's
does.
so many
You
good
know,
teachers.
yes, but as a Roman Catholic years ago, from what I was told, Catholics were not allowed to read the Bible. Explain that one. Now it's okay. But they weren't even allowed to go to other Christian based churches. And I heard like Baptists were like, oh no, you got to be Baptist, Pentecostals, Seventh day Adventists. These are all within Christian sects. But you know something else? As I've traveled, and I don't even have to go far away. I mean, I could go around the world to see it and I could be local. There are thousands upon thousands of sects within the world's major religions who don't even get along with one another and who believe that not only is it their God, let's say it's Allah, or it's the God of the Old Testament as opposed to the way maybe Christians see the God of the New Testament. But in each case, all of these sects believe that it's their way within that greater religion. And so, you know what? This is probably going to offend everybody and yet maybe make everybody think at the same time.
Maybe.
But I remember saying to my husband, this was a couple of years ago, we were on a cruise, and my mind is always, I don't think it's ever changed since I was little, even though I'm here in this world within it. But we're on the cruise ship, and if you ever look around the cruise ships, they invite many people to come on as guests, but they also have people that work on the cruise ships that are from everywhere, from every country. And at least I get to know everybody. And I said to my husband, you know what? I'd like to know where the God people are. So he looks at me, he's used to this. He said, what do you mean? I said, Jimmy, the God people. I said, I want you to think about the world's major religions, right? I said, every one of them has had thousands of years to demonstrate that we are the way. This is the only way. And I said, you know what? People have titles. They have affiliations. They'll tell you what religion they're part of. Some of them might be people of the cloth, whatever, right? People of, different cloths that they wear over their heads. And I said, but Jimmy, can't we if God's people are there, wouldn't they be self-evident by now? If all of these religions are following these rules for centuries, why do we have to tell somebody I've got the way? It should be so self-evident.
It should be just obvious.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to do with your words. People will say, well, confess the name of Jesus and you're saved. And then we know a lot of people that do that and they live a rotten life. I have learned over the course of my life, and I have to tell you, you didn't learn what I learned. And you were not, let's say, taught certain things. So I'd be taught certain things and I'd try to work them in with what I knew. And then I'd have either dreams or actual encounters with people. And I think, sometimes I've seen terrible witchcraft in Christian environments, Christian churches. I'm talking about dark witchcraft that's really looking to convert reality and harm people. And then I've seen other people, they'll say, oh, this was years ago. Oh, I'm a light worker. I'm into whatever. And you know something? This is really interesting. The same could be true of someone who says they're a man of God, and yet they don't listen to what they're hearing from their soul, from their higher self, from their source, God. And then you get somebody who looks like they're just a regular old Joe, maybe a businessman, right? Who's driving around a Mercedes. And we would assume as religious people, the man of the cloth, whatever cloth that may be, oh, he's my man, he's God's man, and the other guy isn't. But this is what I got one day. If I speak to one and he doesn't obey me or he doesn't follow after me, and I speak to another one who looks to everybody else like he's pretty ordinary, but he hears me and follows after me, which one is on the God path? So a lot of times we can fool ourselves. We can enculturate ourselves. That means you could be Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Buddhist. You come up with whatever you want to come up with. And yet, what is your heart? Where's your spirit? What's your soul? How are you living? Are you living from that place of love, that place of forgiveness, that place that is looking to extend and to see others as themselves?
Well,
You
I
know,
love that. And
but this is what I contemplate every
this is
single day.
this is the stuff I think about too. So here's, I'm a hummingbird. And so I love flowers. I've always loved flowers my whole life. I love flowers. And the thing I notice about flowers is how many different kinds of flowers there are on this planet. How many different kinds? Even the same kind, the flowers look different. Think about that. And why would human beings be any different?
See, now
Everything created in the world is
okay, now
why
I
would it be
get it.
any different for us?
That's where you get your simplicity. That's kind of where that
Yes.
wisdom comes from. All right, now I want to tell you something. I want you to imagine, going with your analogy here, think of a British garden. Have you ever seen a British garden?
Yes, they're
They
amazing.
grow wild. They've got everything happening. Now, what if somebody said, you know what, I only want one kind of flower there?
That'd be so boring.
Right. But it's the variety, the
It's the
color,
variety.
it's so gorgeous. Now, you know what's fascinating? You said you're a hummingbird. You relate to nature. When I was small, my birthday, I was supposedly born April 13th, 1958, and my birthstone was a diamond. My grandfather had given me a little charm on my charm bracelet and showed it to me one day, and it had on April 13th this little diamond ship, and he said to me, "This is your birthstone. You need to be thinking about these stars in the sky. A diamond is like the stars in the sky." Now, all my life, I was taken up with the amazing movement of the light that would go through diamonds. But I would also, because I was oftentimes in the house, I would take crystals from my grandmother's crystal chandeliers and I'd put them in front of the light in our living room, and I would watch the interplay of the sunlight coming through the crystals and all the colors. When I go out and speak with people about their identity and how to see others like themselves, I have what looks like a little jewelry box. I would call it a treasure chest. It's all beautiful gold. You open it up. Now, it's not real gems, but it's gems of every size and every color and every shape. And I said, you are a gem. That's who you are. I said, now I want you to know everyone in this group is one of these gems. What if I decided to take one gem out? I said, now we are missing the part that
We're
adds
missing.
to the color, the interest. We all go together. It's like everybody's got something to offer. So here I am looking at crystals and diamonds and the interplay of light and how it the refraction and how glorious it all is. And you're looking at flowers. Do you see it's the same thing?
It's the same. And like the colors of the rainbow, it's the
I
same.
know.
Everything is diverse.
That's
It's
what
like,
a crystal gives you. It's all these colors.
this is the intricate design. This is the consciousness that loves diversity. Like it just thrives on that. Every single human being has a unique thumbprint, and so does every soul. That's how it works. We're each unique and we're loved so much.
And if we see the world that way, and we see the world through the eyes of love, which obviously every day may be something of a challenge, this is what I believe. As we continue to choose to see our world through the eyes of oneness, the eyes of love, which really is unconditional love, which means unconditional forgiveness. I don't care what you've done, what you've ever done, what you might do. It doesn't matter. It's already forgiven, because anything that happens with you is going to happen with me. So we're all even. Now
People, okay, let's take a moment with that
go
one.
ahead.
I know that's hard for people. I
It
get
is.
that.
It's a
Totally. I'm with
biggie.
you. But a lot of people get stuck on that. They're like, but I didn't choose to get abused as a child, but I didn't choose, to lose my partner. I is not the one who chose. And it's not really, well, your small self didn't choose that. The person you're being right now didn't choose that. But at some level, you chose to have an experience. You showed up and said, hey, I want to experience what it's like to be Muslim. I want to experience what it's like to belly dance. I want to experience what it's like to be a farmer in Midwest Texas. I mean, you chose, like, I want to experience this. And then guess what? Your wish was granted.
That is such a big thing. And remember I said to you, I don't think I could the world was ready for even my thoughts. It was really hard for me to even write a blog one day saying that I don't hold anything against anybody. Like, that's too dramatic for people to think about.
Yeah.
But
They're like, what are you talking about? And I'm totally judging them and sending them straight to the burning fires.
you know what? I'm so glad you brought this up, and you're right. It does need a pause, but you're right.
It does.
Do you know I had so much fear in my life? Oh, it's ridiculous. I grew up in fear. I mean, if you ever looked at pictures of me from years ago, you'd think this can't be the same person. Every time I would be afraid, do you know what I would go back to? A lot of it was natural for me. I remember once in my life holding a grudge. I was 9 years old, and I held that grudge for about a day and a half, and I realized how rotten I felt. That the person I held a grudge against acted like they didn't even care, and I thought, this is getting me nowhere. I feel rotten. And at 9, I was able to make the connection between my unforgiveness and my rotten feelings. So anything I was hating was really pulling me down. But I have to tell you, I know you've had algebra. I know you're an engineer. Algebra, what's on one side of the equation equals what's on the other. So here's what I looked at every time I'm with someone. Whatever I'm holding against those people, somewhere in my mind, because everything's the same, everything's an algebraic equation, it may not be the same so-called offense, but I am therefore holding an offense against myself. And ultimately, I'm putting myself in a straitjacket and in a jail. The last thing I want to be is incarcerated. And as far as fear goes, in all the times, and I could say this came from my Christian background, because I could think about Jesus. Forgive them, Father, they don't know what they're doing.
They don't know what they're doing. Yeah.
And, we could have a conversation for hours. So let me break it. I'll try to keep it simple. But every time I would feel like I was fearful of anything, anything, maybe I was just going through fear. Do you know what I would always say? Father God or Holy Spirit, whatever. Is there anyone, anything, any thought that I'm holding on to in unforgiveness? Any idea? Maybe I read something. Maybe I saw a movie. Maybe it's a memory that I suppressed. Whatever it is, would you show it to me? Because I've already made the decision. No matter what it is, there's only one decision. The decision is it's already forgiven. And you know something? I really feel like I crawled out of my own hole by doing that. And it could be thousands of times. Who knows how many times we get hit with crazy thoughts. But I've opened my own cage. I've pulled myself out of that darkness, and I don't carry the fear that I used to have. Now, I'm not going to tell you the fear doesn't talk to me, but if you were to see me back then and you were to look at me now, I can tell you from experience, I feel so much happier and freer, and I feel so much brighter, and I feel like I have so much more energy and life in me, because that's it. That's the one decision. We forgive everybody. Why? Because that everybody is another version of me.
And there's another reason why.
Why?
Because you're not in charge of the divine plan.
Thank God. Too big for me.
You're not in charge of the divine plan. You're not the one that decides. So who are you to hold a grudge?
I agree.
Or who are you to say that shouldn't have happened? Because you're not in charge of the divine plan. You're just here experiencing it and being an actor in it, but you're not in charge of anything other than your own choices.
You know what? Thank you for saying this. And I need to share something. Over this past weekend, I was invited to speak at a Christian women's retreat. And it was all about renewal revival. And one of the women who gave the retreat shared something that was so extraordinary. She said she was in a very abusive relationship with her husband, and she had a couple of little children. And she said, you know what? I credit God literally with saving my life. She said, when I would think of this man, she would probably just turn red in the thoughts because he was that abusive. She said one night he was abusing her so badly, and she heard the Holy Spirit, God, talk to her and say, ask him if he would forgive you. Tell him you'd like his forgiveness. And she's like, are you kidding me? This guy is practically killing me. Do you know she listened to that voice? And she said to her husband, as he's beating her up, he used to burn her. There were all kinds of things. Okay. Thankfully, you don't know who this person is. But she said to him, I'm so sorry for anything I've done. Will you please forgive me? And now I want you to hear this. She said the man stopped and fell apart. He started to cry. Now, that man was busy beating his wife. He didn't even know why, but by her saying, will you forgive me? I'm sorry. She might have been speaking. You talk about a divine plan. She might have given the words that that man needed to hear, maybe when he was a child, from somebody who was beating him. We'll never know because we're not part of that big divine plan. But isn't that extraordinary? That forgiveness sometimes absolutely just, it becomes the great salve. And it may not be a salve for this moment. It could be for 10 years from now. It could be saved for another time. But guess what that woman said? She said, I don't want to take that advice, but I accepted it. It saved my life. Isn't that wild?
Yeah,
I
because
mean, that's extraordinary.
yeah, because that you don't know where that started.
And
You
you know
don't
what? Maybe it
know.
started in the Garden of Eden. We don't know. I
Who
just don't
knows?
want to
I mean,
perpetuate it.
possibilities are endless, I
Right.
mean, he could have been with her in another life and she could have been the one torturing him and he's triggered by that. You don't know
We
what it is. That's the
know.
thing. Like, we only have these human brains, and the human mind is like really archaic in many ways.
Li-
And it's
Limited.
incapable of handling the complexity of the divine spirit.
You're right.
It
You
really
know,
is.
yes. You know what? There's just, even as you're speaking, and I know you're not, you didn't learn anything, but I spent years in the Bible, and there would be certain scriptures that would stand out to me that nobody would ever talk about, but they were talking to me. And I'm sure I could be reading some other book, even a secular book. And when you're looking for truth, you're going to find it. It's going to come out at you. But this is one of the words it said, but the carnal mind, which think about as our intellect that we're brought up with, our carnal mind is enmity, meaning hatred against God. It doesn't receive the things of God, doesn't understand the things of God. So literally we have a higher self, a Holy Spirit, right? The bigger self we cannot see. And that is so much greater. And yet we try to process everything through the lens of something that's lived on a world that's so full of confusion, that oftentimes looks insane, right? You're
Well,
told one
and
thing and something else plays out.
it believes lots of things that aren't. I finally, on my journey,
Incongruous.
do you know what saved me on my journey?
What?
Is I realized, because I had so many years in psychotherapy, I mean, I would sit on a couch and I would talk about my problems, and because this early 0 to 5 set up some frameworks in my mind, and some things that started playing out, and I needed to go to therapy and try to heal it because that was the way that they said to do it. But at some point, I realized, wait a second, this thing is the problem. Actually, this brain is the problem. It thinks all these things that aren't true. It has all these stories. It controls how I see. It controls
Yes,
how
it
I
does.
perceive. And
Yes.
that's not even true. What I'm seeing is not believing, because I'm seeing a projection of my mind and it's lying to me.
You figured that out.
Yeah. And
I
I said,
talk
I'm
about
not
this
going to
all
believe
the
that thing
time.
anymore.
You know
That
what?
thing is lying to me.
Carrie, you know what? I'm so glad you brought this thing up. You have however many years you were in psychotherapy. This is something we need to talk about today, because in many ways, religion, we deify religion, okay? We make it our God, religion, whatever that religion may be. And then also in some other environments, people will deify psychotherapy.
Yes.
Follow what I'm saying? They deify things like science.
And
But
that's also an illusion.
it's
We know from the quantum field. We know from quantum physics.
yes,
If you
I know that,
spot
you know
it,
that. I don't know if ever people are starting to catch up on it. It's true.
if you spot
We
it, you make it.
Right. And I talk about this a lot. And the thing is, I have a sense, if people are on the path to truth and to getting home to the peace and the oneness of God, the heart of God, forget this time continuum that we're in, they would all come to that same conclusion. We find all of these isms out there and we think they're all the panacea, but we've looked at all of them. It is something else. And here's the thing. We create our world. When we continuously think and think and think and think and think this one thing, we can't even see truth out there because we literally see through the eyes of our mind. So
Yes.
if we really want to change somewhere, we need to go back in and choose again. And not just choose again what we believe, but sometimes, because if it's a bad habit, we need to choose over and over and over again so that suddenly the old path we were on now gets re-steered and we're on a better one. And that's why I say living happy inside out. Most people look outside and think, oh, that I need that to make me happy, or I need that, or I need to run after something. And yet our happiness is found within. And if we choose it within and we choose the forgiveness, the love, the whatever, then we ultimately start to see it on the outside.
That's so true. And there's another thing that you do that I'm you're probably aware of it, but it's a powerful tool for opening up what you believe, which is that you get to know a lot of people that have a lot of different perspectives. Like, you're constantly exposing yourself to different perspectives and seeing, like, how does that resonate with me? Does that feel like truth or not? And that's how you start to unweave this whole like smudgy glasses thing. It's like you just go, okay, I must not know. My brain must be telling me a lot of stuff. I want to go meet a bunch of people and see like how I can open this thing up so that I can see 360 degrees. I don't just see like 10 degrees.
Carrie, you know what? You just said something so brilliant. In fact, my podcast that's coming out today, if I could get it done, I'm getting ready to go on our next international trip. We'll be in 5 countries and I'll be speaking, I don't know, over a dozen times. And so it'll be totally different over there. But my newest podcast is, What Are You Afraid of? And here's what's so interesting. Do you know what we're afraid of? We're afraid of what we don't know. So
Yes.
that means we only stay with our people. Maybe it's our culture. Maybe it's our economic group, right? Maybe it's our peers at work or people that we went to school with. Maybe it's people in our religion. Maybe it's people our color. Maybe people our age. Maybe people only in our country. And yet, this is what's so great about going out and visiting. And this is kind of where I was going. If you want to get rid of your fear, step out of those zones and start to hear other people's stories. Because what you find in the story is you connect with people's soul. And the soul, the heart, is where we relate to one another. And then suddenly a lot of the barriers go away. Now, we may not be just like them, but we gain an understanding and appreciation and maybe a little bit less judgment. And it works both ways. Do you know, I have to tell you, at my age, I study a lot of history and culture, and I'm looking at what's going on right now. I remember when I was maybe in 3rd grade, 5th grade, we learned the United States was the melting pot. We
Yeah.
had people coming from everywhere. I want you to know, I felt so proud to be here in America. You know why? We were the one country in the world that I was aware of that had people coming from everywhere, and we all became Americans. We all lived together. We could keep our, our ethnic, I always want to call it like our spice. We
We
all
can
have
keep
our
our
spice,
spice. I
but
like
we
that. Our
all
unique
worked. That's
flavor.
how I see it. How boring would this world be? But we were all at the base, the same and happy. I felt so proud. Now here I am, decades later, and I want to know why everything that I keep looking at is the division game replayed under new names. One day I see it happening more and more across the spectrum. People are realizing that what they're seeing in the media and what they experience in real life are not always the same thing. Meaning, I could go to Manhattan. First of all, I'm not so good at finding my way around. I'll walk the streets of New York. I will meet up with more people, ask them for directions. I don't care who they are or what they are. I will talk with everybody, and I'm busy interacting. And guess what? The reality is this. People do know how to get along with their neighbors. But if they keep believing that they're not supposed to, and they keep hearing it, and it keeps replaying, and they get programmed, then therefore they think it on the inside, it becomes evident on the outside. No, you go and you find people. Now, I'm not telling you to walk up to somebody who's got a Uzi gun and say, hi, you want to be best friends? No, you understand.
Use
But
caution. But You know,
But the people you get to know, and then you see they're like you. There's a piece of them in you, and they see the same thing. And guess what you just did? You brought the world a little closer to home. And I don't mean to sound like pie in the sky, but I do mean to sound like reality.
yeah, because we're already here anyway. And so don't you just going to accept the truth that we were created and every one of us is loved in our own way. And so, if you're angry because somebody isn't like you, then, what you're really saying is, God, I think you really screwed up. I think that you shouldn't have created those people. I think you should only have created me.
You
That's a
know,
horrible thing to think about.
you know what? And you're right. I just heard something you're saying, but I'm also imagining what somebody listening to us is going to say. Well, what about so and so who looks like this or acts like this? Let me just say something. And I don't know. And I wrote about this in one of my Art of Happiness books, and it was called Judgment. And in this case, I had a mother-in-law who was Polish, and I'm not Polish. So for the 37 years that she and I were together, she has passed away. She just decided before she knew me, she didn't like me because I wasn't Polish like her. I tried a lot of times to get her to like me, but there was a lot of that. She just didn't like me. Anyway, it all worked for good. Here's what I noticed one day. It was her own fear that was causing her to put up the barriers, that was causing her to give off energy to me that was not accepting, not approving, whatever you want to call it. But do you know, I've had this ability for a long time. I see what can I call it? What is it when you put a record on years ago and it would scratch? Static. Okay.
Oh, static.
I
Yeah.
see the static people create. Sometimes people, they brag too much. Maybe they curse at other people. They're whatever you want to call it, right? They could be mean. They could be angry. They could be negative. But I have this ability, even though I see the static, I'm still going right to the heart. I want to see beyond the static, because the static is I see you now in this moment in time. But to see beyond the static is to go in and see the heart, to say, I see you as you really are. I see you in your eternal, loving, and beloved state. And you know something? Yeah, sometimes it's a challenge, but that's my choice. And I believe the more we each choose to go beyond the static and look to see something that is literally a light within us that could just so brighten the whole world and remove a lot of the fear and a lot of the division. And that's how I choose to do it.
Yeah, I love that. And and I would just say like another avenue into that is just to say, well, how if I could put on glasses of the creator and I could say, why did this creator create this person? Maybe I could find the reason why, and that would bring some peace to me that would let me connect with that person. Maybe I could see through the eyes of the creator to see the beauty that the creator finds in that person.
Carrie,
That's see from the eyes of God. Like, why did God create this person? Why did God create this culture? Why did God? What's in it that's beautiful? Find the beauty.
Carrie, could I tell you what that sounds like, what the heart of a little child would say? And I'm even thinking of Jesus. He said, if you want to enter into the kingdom of God, you must become like little children. That is, imagine how pure that is, how
Yeah.
pure, and how literally all seeing that is. What about a person who maybe has a nice life and then becomes rotten in their behavior, or vice versa? Which one's the real person? But if we have God eyes, and God always is, and there's an eternal place of rest after all of this stuff is done, what better eyes to ask for than those eyes?
Those
That's
eyes. And what you
beautiful.
see is, now that I'm a parent, and I know you can resonate with me on this, I see through the eyes of a parent. Like when I think about God, I think about God as being like the parent of us all.
Me too. Me too. That's
And
how I
I think
thought of it as a
myself,
child.
like my children learned lessons, right? And sometimes they behave in ways that I don't prefer, or they're learning a lesson or they're having a challenge, and I see them struggling with that, and I see them acting in ways that, are undesirable. But I always see the beautiful child that I always see my beautiful children, and I think, wow, they are really learning and growing, and they're going through an experience right now that's bringing them even more growth, even more beauty. So I think God sees us the same way.
Do you know there's such brilliance in that? Yes, I would agree with you. And then these were some of the thoughts I needed over the course of time in religious teachings. Let me say it that way, okay? If God truly is our Father, would he turn against us that fast? And here's another thought, if he's loving, why could it be that I as a parent would have greater love than the ultimate Father above, who came before all of us? Like, how could I be bigger than God? God's got to be bigger in love than I am. And so do you see how all of that really works together? And there's one other thing too, and I've seen this again over the course of time. We all, I don't know, I've yet to meet anybody, are going to go through challenges in life. We're going to believe things. We're going to react to things. We're going to act out of fear. We're going to even attack out of fear. We're going to do things wrong and then try to cover up. There's a gazillion things, right? But if we're on that path, and if you could think about children from God's perspective down to us, the right path is, what did I learn from this? Do I feel better or do I feel worse? Is this helping me or hindering me? But also going through a lot of the sorrow that we find ourselves in and learning the grace, the wisdom, the life lessons, and the way back home to peace and to love, then all of those things, as you're saying, as a parent looking at her children, as a God looking down at all of us, that each one of these things, this is what I always think, it's all going to work out in the end. We may not see it in this moment. I can't figure it out. It's not my job to figure it out, but there's a place of total, complete resolution where everything comes back to its place of harmony. Everything returns to its British garden, loaded with flowers of every sort, and yet every part plays a role in the greater beauty. And synergy, you know? This is me. And you know what? I guess people are probably listening to us saying, yeah, I totally get you, or I can't stand it because you can't be that nice, or you can't be that, you can't believe that way. What's that?
You can't be that understanding.
Right.
Well, you know,
But
yeah.
it's a choice too. And it's
It
a
is a choice.
belief. It's a belief. And you know what the other alternative is? That we are absolutely living in an insane world, and whoever God is, God too, is insane and very mean. And you know something? I may go down to the grave one day. I just can't believe it. Even though I know I've been through tough things in my life, I still can't believe it. I can't get myself to believe it. So anyway, call me an idiot, call me the fool, but I just can't get away from what I know to be ultimate truth. And that, whether it's your garden, my looking up at all, at all the brightness that comes out of diamonds and all the lights. And I can't get away from it. I can't get away from it's a small world.
It's a small world after all. And we're back to the beginning. I love that. See how it all wraps around? It's a small world after all. And we're all created the same and love. So thank you, Maura. Thank you for all this beautiful dialogue. I mean, which chock full of wisdom this
I
broadcast.
feel the same about you. Do you know when who was it that connected us?
I found you because, I was looking around to see who could I interview. That's amazing. There you were.
Wow. And remember I told you, I thought, wow, this lady's out there. Remember I told you that?
Yeah.
We were talking the other day. It was like, wow. You know what it is? And see, I hope that other people listening today, whether they're here or overseas, will get, wow, there's something here I could relate to. I belong to this same place of love. I'm telling you, we solve a lot of problems. And it's not really our doing, but I believe it's really the truth of what is. So thanks for finding me.
Yes, I'm glad I did. Well, fast friends.
I know.
So tell me, so I think you have a way for people to connect with you, right? I mean, how can they get more of Maura?
Funny. Okay. More of Maura. You could find me at my website, Maura, M as in Mary, AURA, followed by for the number, you the letter, Maura for you, because I'm always for you, mauraforyou.com. And there's books, there's podcasts on there, there's a couple of interviews, lots of blogs. There's a lot of stuff. Just trust me. Oh, and I have about 200 videos. But the other thing is, if this audience likes to listen, and they want reflective questions followed by life stories, little call to action so they could retrain their brain, not according to mine, but by being the sovereign person that's going to choose healthy thoughts, go to iTunes or to Stitcher or to Google Radio. I think about a couple of places. Look for Maura Sweeney, Living Happy Inside Out. Maura Sweeney, Living Happy Inside Out. Sign up for my iTunes and go to my More For You website. Can I get one more thing?
Yes.
Okay. Since we've got everybody on, I have 6 books in my Art of Happiness series. If they go to my website, write to me and go check out the books that I've got and write in there the subject line, the name of your show, which is
Soul
Soul
Nectar.
Nectar, and ask me for one of those books and I'll send one for free.
Oh, that is really
I
great.
love it.
That's really great. All right. Well, I will put that all in the email sequence that goes out with this interview. And thank you so much, Maura. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too with you. Thank you for finding me and interviewing me and
Yeah.
chatting, because I loved everything I've heard from your side too. It was really neat.
And then I like to end my broadcast with kisses. So I'm just going to, you want to join me and give people kisses?
Yes.
Okay.
I love that.
Kisses, everybody. And we'll see you guys next week on Soul Nectar. Bye.
Bye.